go straight into it. So, introduce yourself. Let the listeners know who you are.
Yeah. Sure. So David Burns. Hello, everybody. I grew up in the UK on the little southeast town of Eastbourne. That when I tell people that, they always say with all the old people. In fact, recently someone said to me it's becoming a bit younger now, so I was very happy about that. First time in about 30 years anyone has ever said that to me. So, great upbringing, seaside town, lots of, fishing and very healthy lifestyle. So, very grateful for that. And then I went to school in Bexhill-on-Sea, good old Catholic school, which, begrudgingly, actually, because we used to get up super early to catch a train to school. But it was good in the winter when it snowed because the trains didn't run. So I was happy with that. And then, let's go. So then I left school. I went to catering, Eastbourne College of Arts and Technology, 2-year full-time catering diploma. And I opted into the hot, sweaty kitchens of London and Europe.
Okay.
So chef by trade for the first decade of my working life, and enjoyed it very much. Great for travelling in Portugal. I worked in France, and then I came to Australia in 1988 on a 6-month working visa, which is now 32 years ago.
Wow.
So I've overstayed that visa. So
your parents still here, or they've moved with you?
No, my parents passed away a long time ago. My mother in 88 and my father 10 years later. So I had, a very small family and quite a small network back in the UK. So, in a lot of ways made it easier to come down here. So again, had a great journey in Australia and discovered quite quickly that this was arguably going to be a better life for me for all the obvious reasons. And then I, again, chefing up and down the east coast of Australia. And then this is where, the slightly unusual career diversification starts. So I joined Coles Supermarkets, which is like your Tesco, in the capacity of, development chef. And it was helping in earnest with the ready meals era here in Australia. And this is in the mid-90s. Yeah. And that very quickly morphed me into the buying ranks as part of the same team. So, I very quickly became a buyer in the delicatessen, and then I ran the bakery business for Coles Supermarkets right through to about end of 2003. Right. So I had a very, very steep trajectory of professional development and learning and personal development over 10 years at Coles Supermarkets, and just quite bizarre from the career I started out with, and very enjoyable and just constantly learning every second of the day, like I still do now, to be frank. Then I joined BP Australia, so I put together the Wild Bean Cafe for BP here in Australia. I know you know that concept well in London there, and went on to lead the merchandise team, and that was part of a sort of a retail transformation from an oil company legacy to a serious retailing business here in Australia, in fact globally. And then I did a few other tic tacs from sort of 2000. I spent 4 years with Repco Auto Parts, so total industry change, but fundamentally the principles are the same. Similar business to your Hortons, similar. And then over the last 4 years, and again this happened quite by accident, probably a bit before when you and I first started talking, I with the industry knowledge and experience and background in the food industry, I started helping a friend of a friend who was developing a new brand and a new product range, and I thought to myself, this is really enjoyable, and I realised I could add a lot of value to, in particular, food and beverage packaged brands with their strategy, because obviously I've been on both sides, so I knew about the buying side and the selling side, and that's just really morphed into a lot of fun and a lot of travel and a lot of help for probably 50 or so brands that I've worked with over the last 4 years. And I've also done some work with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and more recently a lot of work in trends, current trends, and more importantly, what are the future trends of food and beverage. So in old Melbourne here, so that's a lightning speed journey of David Burns. Yeah,
it's interesting how you sort of transitioned from being a chef to getting into sort of a more management, buying, procurement, and then sort of going. I guess you were always quite a people's person. The marketing, branding side comes quite naturally to you.
I think you're right, and I guess I'd say to anyone out there, regardless of what industry you're in, you have to. Everyone has strengths, and it's really about harnessing those strengths. You're going to go a lot further by leveraging your strengths than you are, trying to develop your areas that need improvement. But I think I've always been entrepreneurial, very innovative, very right-brained. If I have to sit in front of a laptop for more than an hour and a half, I have to stand up and walk around type of guy.
No, yeah, absolutely makes sense. And family-wise, I mean, again, I've done my research. Married into a family that owns an olive vineyard.
Yes,
so
you have done some very good research. Well done. Yes, so very entrepreneurial family. So my father-in-law, 25 years ago, came home and said, "I've just bought a farm," to Lindy, my mother-in-law, which is sort of what he does, and then set out with the family to plant almost 3,000 trees over sort of 3 years.
Wow.
So now, so we have quite a, it's not a massive business, but it's really good business, keeps him busy. He's in his early 70s now. Olive oil, obviously, and we recently started pickling the olives as well. Some go to the US, and the bulk of it is 10-litre casks of oil to the hotels here,
right,
in Australia.
Yeah.
And we're up there with the boys quite often because they can run around and ride their bikes, and especially at the moment, we'll be heading up there this afternoon with everything that's going on. Yeah.
No, it's really interesting. Obviously, I've sold olive oil, all sorts of olive oil for many years. So there's a bit of an interest there, and I've started a little bit of cooking also. So obviously, olive oil is very central to my own sort of taste buds. So that's really interesting. And then obviously there's the other side of your wife's business, which is jewellery.
Yes. So Ellie's very, very right-brained also, so it's just a bit dangerous, a couple being extremely right-brained, I must say, because it means you don't get a lot of the administration of the businesses done as effectively as they should. But, she's very creative. She designs her own jewellery, and she gets, but mainly sterling silver. Yeah. And she gets that manufactured in India, and she's done very well. It's about 5 years now. Yeah. In fact, I'm sitting in the little warehouse here where we keep all the jewelry, and Ellie's mother also has an importing business from India, soft furnishings and jewelry. And homewares. Yeah.
So it's a nice dovetail into that, especially with the supply chain, and works quite well together, doesn't it?
Definitely, absolutely, yeah, it does. No, it's good. So it's crazy family, lots of interesting conversations at the dinner table.
Well, very entrepreneurial, isn't it? So and I guess that you're three boys.
I've got three young boys, 9, 7, and 4, and believe it or not, I've got another one due in 2 weeks.
Wow. Okay. You've been busy boy.
It's going to be interesting times, and interesting times to bring a new person into the world.
Yeah. And I guess being an offspring of an entrepreneur myself, I was exposed to business all my life. I mean, your kids must be just soaking it up from parents, their grandparents, mother, father. For them, it's like, wow.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because they don't. I guess they don't really know any different, right? But I think they do love it, and I think one thing we do notice at school is, lots of the other parents sort of comment on, how sort of entrepreneurial they are in their thinking. We do lots of different things that perhaps their peer group potentially don't get up to. Right through from fishing out in the bay and the farming piece. So it's amazing. It's amazing for the kids. I should say have older children too. So they're older now, adult children as well. So it's never a dull moment.
Yeah, yeah. I remember you just reminded me when we were out in Saudi. I grew up in Saudi with my father was an engineer there, and he used to run a business, and he had a construction site, but a camp for he had 1,000 odd people. We actually built a go-kart with a motorcycle engine completely from scratch. My brother and I. We were like 10 or 11 or 12 at that stage. So when you have those sort of facilities available, you do really creative things when you're quite young, and
Oh, no doubt about
it's
it.
it's a phenomenal experience to have when you're at that age.
Yeah, my father-in-law is very handy, naturally handy, and he's been amazing with Luca, who's my 9-year-old. The other day, Luca was screwing in these flashy doorknobs on the back of his bedroom door so he could hang his dressing gown on, and I heard him say, "Oh, whoop, bit far," and put the drill into reverse, back out again. And he's just turned 9, so yeah, it is amazing. But
Yeah,
again, they don't know any different, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, interesting. So you run DJB Food Group.
yeah,
Tell
yeah.
us a little bit more
DJ.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're my initials. I thought it'd be a good place to start. Have your business named after yourself is always a good thing for many reasons. And so I think what it's morphed into. I think in terms of reputationally, I think I've done a good job in I guess stamping some sort of authority on this food and beverage industry, particularly in the packaged food and beverage area.
Mm.
Through some of the stuff you mentioned, I've published a lot of sort of semi-helpful content. I have 2 partners in the UK in London, so we do some referring either way, like, a bit like the Ashes.
Yeah.
So that's really good, and I've got contacts in the US, and obviously with the proximity to Asia, we've done quite a bit in some of the Asian hubs like Hong Kong, Japan, Vietnam, Singapore, etc. So what do we do? So it's a very holistic approach. It is mainly packaged goods, but we have done some work in food service as well. And it depends, largely in the startup, small to medium area. We'll have worked with some bigger companies. And, one of the things I was really conscious of doing early in the piece is really, part of your reputation of what you do as a consultant is some great case studies, right? So I was lucky enough to work with Remedy Kombucha here in Australia a few years ago, now in the UK and the US, and been 50% or almost half acquired by Lion Nathan. So, and I use that and 1 or 2 others as good case studies for people to think, okay, great, well, if he's helped them, then they can help me. So that's very important, and so I do use that. And then it's really at the highest level, it's strategy, and it starts off with are you? I'm talking to potential brand now. Are you across all the insights, pricing? What are the trends? What are the gaps in the market? Are you positioning yourself appropriately to create success? And there's this whole piece of around commercial viability.
Yeah.
Which is the piece that really a lot of brands, particularly the startups and small to mediums, but even large businesses sort of struggle with, and that's broken into 3 pieces. One, the timing of what you're doing, is the most important thing, right? So
Yes.
Are you too early? Are you, too early where no one's going to understand what you're doing? Are you too late where there's a million competitors and it's going to be hard to cut through?
Yeah.
And then the insights, as I said, is there a need for your product and brand? Have you asked the consumers what have they said? That's missed. And then again, the most important part is it's not just about your product, right? It's all about your brand and your purpose and the greater good that you're trying to create. And that's
the why, I guess.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes, and then
why'd you get up in the morning? Why'd you do what you do? And
exactly. Yes, and then it becomes a sales, distribution, and marketing play, and a lot of hard work. So we get involved in all of that, varying stages depending on where we're at. I've worked with a big pie company up in Townsville for almost 3 years now. Some of the engagements are 3 months, but very dynamic and very exciting.
And how do you find? It's interesting. How do you find, especially the startups? Because one of the biggest challenges I've come across a few of those sort of scenarios here is to take somebody like yourself on. If there's a cost issue for them,
yeah.
How do you overcome that, especially with startups?
It's a very good question. Look, I think it's been an issue over the years, but obviously it's been 4 years now, so I've survived. And look, I think at the end of the day, my pitch to the smaller guys who have, affordability challenges is, it's really, in the scheme of life, it's not a lot of money. It's for a monthly engagement, it's kind of over a year, and obviously I'm not totally dedicated to their brand either. It's it's sort of an average kind of wage for a full-time person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and then we're able to sort of work with 6 or 8, or we maybe had 10 brands at one stage. So obviously got to be careful with how many brands you can work with.
Sure.
And then look, there's lots of different ways to skin the cat. Potential. Depending on the brand and the potential. I mean, if there's enormous potential, then arguably you're a little bit more flexible with potential
Sure.
deferred payment or different payment scheme or higher commission and a lower base. So we look at the commission as well. So as we build their business, we get a commission on the sales, which is much more palatable for the brands, but obviously less palatable for us.
Yeah.
So there's, at the end of the day, I think to a degree we tailor a package that's affordable, but obviously we can't do it for free, right? Because we've got to eat as well. Yeah.
Sure. It's interesting because I mean you have such a versatile range of products that you sell. I mean, I've seen it through the videoing that you do and the social media. Social media obviously is a big part of what you do. It has to be. Where you sit, branding, social media kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
It is, and it's quite funny. Like, fortunately for me, is I'm quite creative, and I've actually had very little training or coaching on social media and what to do and how to do it. So I've really Instagram and LinkedIn, and LinkedIn in particular, but Instagram is my other one where I sort of play around with. And my Instagram, I mix a bit of family in there, as you've seen, to keep it
6,500 followers. I mean, wow.
That's right, and it's nice and authentic. It's authentic, and I think people like that. And I just tell it as it is. If the boys are in there, so be it. It is key. And I have had a lot of the business we've generated has been through word of mouth or through my social media. Yeah,
and I think what people like to see is the man himself. They like to see that human element of who they're dealing with. I think one of the things that we where I am in my age, and obviously my sons are in their sort of early 20s now.
Yeah.
And they're teaching me a few things on and sales and marketing.
Definitely.
And gone are those days where you have a marketing degree and you have a marketing qualification. You come into it's all blurred. The whole thing. Everyone's doing a little bit of it. It's really finding the right formula, and you do it beautifully through your some of the videos that you put out. And I love it, the fact that you talk about, because I sometimes have a problem talking in front of a camera. Also, I get quite nervous. So I think you put out a video about slow down. You don't have to rush what you say. It's wonderful. It's the right balance between stuff that's brand related, work related, and other bits that support your listeners.
Yeah, it's funny, those some of the 1-minute videos you're referring to. I don't like to put a video up, or if I haven't done it in one take. They're absolutely all one take. Call it one take wonder.
Yeah.
So a bit of a rehearsal. I just have a few bullet points on a piece of paper. You might notice me glancing to the left every now and then. Yeah. But they're all, believe it or not, they're all one takes. First take.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? And you would have thought that you've had some sort of training. I mean that's the way and that's the beauty of the social media, is that everyone does it differently. There is no right way.
Yeah. Oh, look, I was fortunate. I still do a bit now, but I was always did a bit of modelling over the years, so I was quite confident in front of camera, and I love talking, as you can hear now. You can't get a word in edgeways, but I mean, some people it comes naturally, and some it doesn't, and it seems to for me. But you do a good job too, I must say. I enjoy looking at your videos, standing out front of the the hospital the other day.
Yeah,
mother, by the way.
Yeah, she's okay. She was I think she just wanted to get out of the house.
Yes.
But she had actually injured herself the day before. She did a little bit of home exercise, and she's suffering from other ailments, quite serious ones.
Yeah.
And the ambulance came in. Her back was hurting. Took her to hospital. I went to see her, and that's why I did the post. They wouldn't allow me to see her, obviously, naturally.
Yeah.
But they sent her back in the evening, so she's back. She's
okay.
She's
Good.
okay. But there's always a danger, isn't it, with what's going on? Because she can pick up something pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, we got baby coming in 2 weeks, as you know. So it's a debate as to do you stay in hospital or do you come home, and it's like one visitor at a time. So it's going to be interesting times.
Yeah. But it's listen, the technology and the people they're such professionals. When I went to the hospital on that day, they were so good, and they obviously know their job. And totally. Our job is to listen to them, I guess. But look, I just really interested in your career path, because you've done the corporate piece, and obviously this is the own business piece. I mean, where does your heart sit? Obviously in the own business piece, but because I've done a bit of corporate after my business, I went and worked for Breaks Food Service, and I don't think I could survive. I didn't survive in corporate. Just too much for me.
No, look, it's a really good question, and the answer is I'm open-minded. I really enjoy what I'm doing now, and equally, if the right opportunity came up, which is not impossible, and in fact, I have had one or two conversations of recent times, I'll totally be open to jumping back in, but obviously I'd need a lot of autonomy, and I'd need to be able to be creative, otherwise.
And that's the problem.
Well, I don't think it is, because that's my criteria, so it won't be a problem, otherwise I wouldn't do it. So that would be my criteria, right? I am open, totally. Yeah.
Okay, good. I mean, it's interesting because we've talked a few times, and I wanted to put this to you, because for somebody out there who's looking to transition, especially somebody who's not necessarily starting off out of university, but who's done 15, 20 years and want to transition into something else. Yeah. I mean, what's your advice on that? What do you think is the best way to do that, to be successful?
To start sort of become a service provider of sorts, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, somebody who's been in a job, say in corporate, has gone in and wants to either start their own business up or, move into a different field completely.
Yeah. So I think, if you're talking, corporate role in an industry, and want to try another industry, still working for someone else, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
I think it's all about transferable assets, right? Transferable skills, transferable, experience from one industry into another. Because I think what a lot of people don't realize is that the similarities. So I worked in the automotive industry, right? Repco, which is similar to your Hortons, from grocery, and it was so seamless. It was ridiculous, because at the end of the day, it's a product and or a service, and the retail and B2B principles are the same. They are the same. Yeah. So I think people need to understand, as I said earlier, your strengths, and how those strengths can apply into another industry. And then my recommendation to people is, list the, top 20 businesses that you really admire, regardless of the industry. As long as there's, you wouldn't be a plumber and then want to be a hairdresser, for example. So a bit of common sense applies. But, and reach out, make sure your LinkedIn profile is excellent and you've got a red hot resume. And then you reach out to these key people within these organizations directly, through LinkedIn. Obviously, face-to-face meetings are great. Get into obviously not right this second, but get into the right networking breakfasts and so on and so forth. Yeah. And illustrate to these people, the results you've achieved in doing what you're doing. And really that is, and obviously, there's the executive search firm world as well. But, my view is, touch base directly yourself and be clear on what your path needs to be, and get a mentor as well, because often it's hard to see the trees from the forests. And ironically, I've never had one, but probably need one right now, to be frank.
Okay.
Have a sounding board as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I was gonna. My next question was actually for somebody who's either worked for corporate or had their own business, and then they're transitioning out into a consultancy, basically. Somebody really, really going out into something on the lines of what you've done.
Yeah. So for me, I guess a couple of things for me is if you're going to be providing a service in an industry after a corporate career, it's got to be reputable and it's got to be credible. And the way to do that is a couple of things. One, narrow, deep focus. So for me, it's food and beverage. And even though that's immensely broad, it's sort of narrow at the same time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then really be very clear on who your sort of target client is and why. And then the third piece is really, building a very credible story. So when you engage with these potential clients, you've got either a great case study, whether that's your career, or a great case study, whether it's some clients, and then really be able to articulate, that value. So it's at the highest level, that's it. And obviously, get some help along the way.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
And I think also you make some very interesting points and very valid points. I think the other areas is tap into the network.
My word.
Yeah, it's something that I've actually gone back to, and I'm going through this process at the moment. So I'm really touching base with everybody that I know, and having conversations and seeing what commonalities are there.
No, definitely. And there's a word that falls out of networking, which is really important right this second, and that is collaborate. So, when I first started, someone doing something similar to me, you'd see as a competitor. And now I get in touch and say, hey, what do you think of this idea? In fact, I had one this morning. We're looking at, digital trade show type concept, digital video style buyer retailer meeting sort of thing, and there's 2 or 3 of us from 2 or 3 different companies talking about pulling something like that together. So if you're working on your own and you're developing your own consultancy, you've got to collaborate, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise you're gonna spin your wheels.
It's absolutely, and especially what's going on now worldwide.
For sure.
We don't know where things will end up and where we land. So this sort of interaction is really at the moment the only medium we've got
definitely
to talk to each other. So I think people need to understand, to get in their mindset that there's a change here, and it could be partially permanent.
Yes.
And I think that's really key. But one other thing that's really interesting that you brought up was this idea of when you have a business, a startup, is to collect a number of high net worth individuals who are mentors to that business. I think that is such an important point that you make.
It is. And also with the networking thing is interesting. I guess I'm talking mainly on LinkedIn here, but also face to face. People try and link in. People try and limit who they're networking with on LinkedIn. Someone tries to link in with you and you sort of look at it and go, well, why would I link in with that person? They're not going to add value to me or my life or my career. But you never know who they know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why that conversation is so important. And taking your advice, just today I've contacted a company called In Touch, who actually help people like yourselves, people like myself, and place us into boardrooms as non-exec directors to help businesses. And especially if you think of where things are now, companies that are on their knees and they need as much help as possible from those experienced people, to help them to get back onto track. And, if I was describing to the individual I was talking to today, if you look at me, I based on my own experience and where I've come from after losing a business, is that I'm not necessarily sort of risk averse, but risk aware in my approach to things.
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting point you just raised there. One of the things we do, in fact, I see my job as helping businesses reduce their risk as well as grow their business, right? So it's optimize growth and reduce risk. So I spend a lot of my time telling people, suggesting to people what not to do. probably more often than what to do, right?
Yeah.
As entrepreneurs, it's easier to say, I wanna do this, I'm going to do that, and you know, often you have a lot more success being very clear on what you're not going to do.
yeah. It's interesting, and I think those pair of eyes that sit outside of that sphere, that you know, where the forest sits. That's why it's. I think it's you make this point so well, that you know you've got to get these 2-3 individuals into that boardroom to give you that outside view, and consistently keep on bouncing things and facts and ideas off of them, and get their view on it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, I guess it's two things. It's, you know, having a really good plan first, you know, medium to long term plan, and then, you know, the are we on track sort of forum. Yeah,
and I think one of the other things is, I was talking to Hayden, my oldest, and he works for a tech business, and they're suffering at the moment. But the interesting thing is that if you bring in those sort of individuals, and if you bring in those individuals in the sectors that you want to work in, so that gives you those insights into potentially those people will give you insights. They'll give you what are the pitfalls, what are the advantages. It allows you to actually gain knowledge from those mentors to be able to go into a new sector, a new market that you want to tap into. So you make this wonderful point. Just want to talk about also food. But that's your life, isn't it?
It is.
What's trending at the moment?
Yeah, so obviously, you know, it's no secret. There's an enormous movement within the, you know, wellness, food and beverage, or you know, better for you, or whatever catchphrase you'd like. And all the emerging trends largely are in that health sector. So I'll talk about one or two. So, you know, there's this whole movement that you'd be aware of around alternatives, or you know, staple swap outs, or you know, a couple of names that we call it. And you know, so this probably started about 12 or 13 years ago with soy milk, right? Dairy alternatives. So, you know, started off with soy milk, and that's almond milk, and there's every milk you can shake a stick at. In fact, in Melbourne, half of coffee drunk in cafes is not cow's milk, it's alternative milk.
Is it?
So that's happened over, you know, a dozen years or so. So it's quite staggering what the dairy industry could end up like in a generation or so. So I love this movement of alternatives. You know, there's alternatives to pretty much anything, as you know. And then within that, there's this meat, you know, the alternative protein or alternative meat movement. So that's just going to grow and grow and grow. And then within the alternative space, there's a lot of the really exciting stuff happening in alcohol. So alcohol-free alcohol. You might have heard of Seedlip, sort of alcohol-free gin, which is really tastes like gin with the tonic. You'd barely know, and it's just very, very clever. And then there's, you know, kombucha. I was in the States a few weeks ago. There's kombucha that's now 6% alcohol. So kombucha now sits in with the alcohol area as well, with really cool branding. And then within there, there's also this sounds terrible, but there's almost a better for you alcohol emerging, which is, you know, cleaner, lower calories, potentially got probiotics and all this stuff happening as well. So a whole world of alcohol alternatives happening as well, which is exciting. But it's not, you know, and then food is medicine, and so there's lots happening in the food, but also in the, you know, it's a very small segment but very high growth. And believe it or not, and this is evidenced by, you know, pasta disappearing off the shelves over the last few weeks with the panic buying. But, you know, there is still a massive opportunity within this, you know, call it the comfort food world. So when I stand at Sydney Airport in the food court at 1 o'clock at lunchtime, it's still McDonald's and it's still KFC that where the crowds are, right? So there's still a massive opportunity to make that world, call it, you know, conscious comfort food. So it's slightly more, you know, health orientated, and, you know, vegan pies would be maybe a good example in Australia that are really kicking on. And then within that, there's this notion of almost reinvention. So I've seen, you know, products that you and I know for all our lives are being reinvented into, you know, a product or a brand for another occasion or another consumer. And a couple of examples are, a small packet of 3 dates, that it's a convenience pack and it's a snacking pack. Very clever actually, but pretty basic with cool branding, and also naan bread into bread crisps, as a snacking product. So this whole notion of reinvention will gather momentum, but yeah, fundamentally they're the big ones, but there's a whole stack of others as well. I love, in Australia in particular, the kids segment. So better for you snacking and drinks for kids for the school canteens and the school lunchbox. Every child in Australia takes a lunchbox to school, so there's a massive opportunity as well. So exciting times for sure.
Yeah. And running your own business, I guess, and you've had with all these opportunities that are coming through and have come through. Clearly, you have been successful in what you've achieved. What are the challenges that you found? As you've been in your journey, what are the obstacles that you've had to overcome to get to where you are? And the other thing I was really interested in is where do you see yourself going?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the first one, look, I suppose income-wise, over a 12-month period, it's obviously more than good enough. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been doing it for 4 years. But it does get outrageously lumpy. So obviously, chasing payments. So that has been a bit tough on and off.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That's a big challenge. And then the other challenge is, how do you short circuit a conversation to understand if there is an affordability issue with a potential client? Obviously you want to engage with potential clients and talk to them and help them, but how long do you do that before they say to you, I'd love to work with you, but I can't afford it? So that's the challenge, And then obviously, you want to work with these people and create some success for them, right? So 95% of times we've been able to do that in one way, shape or form, but in the early days there were 1 or 2 where we just couldn't do that, and it was more about their energy wasn't quite there. They were wanting to get out, or the product wasn't right, or the brand wasn't right. And I was probably learnt my lesson there, just being a little bit more selective on who you do and don't work with as well.
Yeah.
Some brands.
Do you get a lot of repeat business? Do you get a lot of sort of people come back to you after you've completed a project?
I'll always stay in touch, but I think generally speaking, there's a start and an end. They need a help to get them to a certain level, and when that's done, we walk away, and that's the nature of the business. There's a couple of businesses that I've worked with for a long time. I think March will be 3 years with the Outback Pie Company here in Queensland. Yeah, so they're the challenges, and also I work with Simon here. It's a bit lonely as well, right? It is a lonely old world. So especially when you've led big teams, corporate parties and lots of interaction with lots of different people from all walks of life. So I do miss that as well, the team leadership piece.
Yeah. It's interesting because just for the listeners' sake, we connected because my son came and worked for you.
He did. He was an intern, mate. He was great. He also was very good educator on all the rooftop bars in Melbourne for me. So there you go.
Okay, you didn't tell me that.
No, he's a good lad. Yeah. I think he enjoyed it too.
He enjoyed it, and he has very fond memories. I think
great.
You were quite an inspiration to him.
That's great.
Are you still involved in the intern side of things?
Yeah. Well, I spoke to one yesterday, in fact, but we're looking at doing it digitally. I'm not sure how that will work.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Keep on posting on that one.
Yeah, and then to answer your question on the vision. Yeah, I think the vision is at the highest level more of the same, but I have thought of taking it a couple of steps further and being involved or owning or starting the distribution side as well. And the notion there is most distributors are product movers and not much else. No disrespect to anyone, but I think there's an opportunity to have a distribution company that can actually provide the help that we provide as well, more holistically. Mm-hmm. So we do all of this stuff, and by the way, we distribute as well. And that would do a couple of things. It would be very credible when you're having conversation with brands to say, hey, we're a distributor as well. Like, oh shit, really? Yeah, so I think that would be the end game, and then obviously, the brands wouldn't want to hear this, but obviously we are looking to invest and or develop our own brands as well, because we can, and we're well connected.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we?
Exactly. I mean, you run. I guess you have two already. There's Yellenborough. Which is your olive oil. So yellingbow.com for anyone who's interested. And obviously, I guess did you have any involvement in the jewelry side of things in terms of branding?
Not really. I just help Ellie just from an advisory. We have a small board, so I chair that board. So not really a direct involvement. Obviously, when she's doing new collections, we get involved and have a look at what's going to work. But she's very creative. She's like she reminds me of. Have you seen? There's a really good documentary just started about Ralph Lauren.
Right.
It's called Very Ralph. You should check it out. And,
I'll check it out.
He's like, just very quickly, I don't want to tell you about the documentary.
Yeah.
But he actually was a really snappy dresser and couldn't find anything that he wanted to wear, so he started getting his own clothes tailor-made.
Right.
Yeah, and then and that's how it started. So Ellie's the same. Like, she just doesn't want anyone to tell her what a piece of jewelry should look like. She's very right-brained.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of help I can do on the design side, but from a commercial point of view, I help. Yeah. Yeah,
which is interesting because I want to just kind of step away from the business side and look at more of your life and again going back to the research. You're part of the sort of white ribbon. You're a white ribbon ambassador. Involved in White Lion as mentor. You do a lot of other things that are, I think, very important to you, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I do love the giving back piece. I don't know where that comes from, to be honest, but I think if everyone did something for people in need, then the world would be a different place, right? Whether that's time or financially or any other way. But yeah, so the White Lion was helping young people coming out of the justice system to adjust. And White Ribbon's actually now ceased, White Ribbon, sadly, in Australia. But yeah, that was helping promoting awareness of to stop violence against women from men. Yeah,
absolutely. And I just want to touch on one other thing that I guess it was to use the word challenging, I think it would be an understatement. And you posted on your social media on what happened to your son Remy. I was shocked when I read that, and credit to you, my friend. Credit to you for having the courage to actually post something like that, because that's something people find difficult to talk about. Do you wanna share?
Yeah, no, it's a really emotional time. It was oh my God, it's 3 years ago now, was it? He was 15 months, and cut a long story short, there's a big issue in Australia with drownings in backyard swimming pools. Right. A lot of Australian homes have a swimming pool in the backyard. So, and then God knows how many years ago there was legislation came into every pool had to be fenced for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So we had a good fence and a gate, and the edited version of the story is we were out down the park, and my father-in-law was at home, and he was cleaning up around the pool, and he propped the pool gate open with a chair, which is even if the family's in Brazil, it's one thing you should never do is prop a pool gate open, especially obviously when you've got little ones. So we all came home, and I was cutting up mangoes in the kitchen, which fortunately was within view of the pool. And Remy, my at the time 15-month-old, potted out and lowered himself into the pool. And just in the corner of my eye, I could see this tuft of hair sort of wobbling around face down. And then, just like Superman, I went over the kitchen table, over the fence, and I was in there and lifted him up, and he's sort of spluttering already, thank God, and called the ambulance and all that rigmarole, and he was all right. So I think he was probably face down. I'm guessing it was maybe 10 seconds, and it actually allegedly can be as quick as 45 seconds for that to be all over. So yeah, and I did, and it was middle of summer. It was January, so I did want to write about it just to heighten the awareness. I mean, I know a friend of a friend who lost twins, and I think don't quote me, but I think it's somewhere in the region of 250 or 300 littlies that do drown in pools, and it's largely through damaged fences or malfunctioning fences, and it's just just a horrible thing. But lucky escape for me.
Yeah. That's a very, very brave thing to do to share that. By the way, I think it's And
Thanks,
it's creating that awareness also. It's important. I said, you look at social media profiles, and you just don't pick any of this sort of stuff up, and the fact that you shared it was just brings the human side out in
Yeah.
you. I think it's really good.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
I
it's
appreciate
absolutely
that, mate.
brilliant.
Thanks. Yeah.
Um, and again, going back to your interests, sports. You like
Yeah, mate.
sports, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I have. I've always loved fit. I'm a pretty fit guy. Obviously, less so today than 20 years ago. But
Look pretty fit to me.
I was always a good runner. Always had the running thing, and played soccer, played football in England growing up, obviously, and got into triathlon in a big way in the 90s. I actually, in 2010, I did the Ironman triathlon, which is the 3.8 swim and the 180 ride, and then the marathon. So I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. But that was my day of madness. In fact, 10-year anniversary is coming up on the 28th of March.
Wow. Okay.
And yeah, now I just bit of running and get into the gym, and just chasing the boys is enough, man.
Yeah. Tell me about it. I did that about sort of 10, 15 years ago. They're now in their 20s, like I said. So I've got actually more time. Actually, I've gone back into the gym a little bit more with a little bit more structure, because I've got that time to do that.
Yeah.
Because they've grown up. But interestingly, we touch upon Brighton and Hove football.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Tell me about your love for the team.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Eastbourne. It's 45 minutes from Brighton, so I became a Brighton supporter very young. They did the FA Cup run in 1983. So if anyone that's less than kind of 40 years old, you wouldn't know that Brighton got to the FA Cup final in 1983. Very memorable cup run. And then I saw them numerous times, obviously, and follow them now, and it's been bloody frustrating the last year. Graham Potter's done a great job. Different playing style, but they just can't score goals. It's bloody frustrating.
Yeah.
And then I think my prediction for what will happen with the Premier League. You want to hear that?
Yeah, might as well. The boys were just to let listeners know. The boys have a podcast called the Premier League Trio. So they said, look, listen, if you want to go on there, they're happy to bring you on as a guest and talk football for half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever it is that you want to do.
I might do that.
Yeah. Tell me, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, so as everyone would probably know, if you half follow the football, Premier League's finished at the moment. Yeah. I think they should finish the season regardless of how long it's going to take. And I think, it's all about Liverpool, to be honest, because they're so far ahead. Yeah. I reckon they should get together a couple of neutral grounds and smash out the rest of the season in, 4 or 5 weeks, probably 2 games a week, and then worry about next season. When next season comes around, whenever that might be. And obviously all these games will more than likely be played without crowds. So I think that would be the best outcome, in fairness to everyone, and obviously, financially probably we'll get some things back on track as well. So, but let's see, eh?
Yeah, let's see. I think there's so many things that have been affected by this, football, Olympics, so many other activities. And I think it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Just on a sort of, as we're sort of tailing off, Corona, COVID-19. Yeah. I mean, what's your thoughts on the virus in terms of how it'll impact, and especially in Australia, because obviously we're in the UK, we're I guess a little bit ahead of you in terms of the curve. But for yourselves, I mean, what's your view in terms of the impact on Australian life?
Oh, it's dire, isn't it? I mean, what can I say? I think it's going to be similar everywhere. So obviously, economically, it's a massive challenge, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
What can I say? It's going to be lots of unemployment. Well, hopefully, one thing is going to be short term.
Yeah.
Short to medium term. So in my industry specifically, in hospitality, my advice is, if you've got a cafe, or it's all about getting your costs out. Getting the government help, which is obviously available, getting rent relief as quickly as you can. And then, really, I think one thing that's really key in all of this is positive mindset, right?
Yeah.
So, I think if you're on the front foot, and I've seen some really innovative ideas from pub owners who are doing home deliveries and all kind of stuff, takeaway delivery, and also back on the collaboration topic. So, if I've got a cafe and I'm in Richmond here in Melbourne, where there's another 50 cafes within 2 kilometres, how can I collaborate? Digitally. Hopefully, these food service businesses have got a consumer database that they can continue to talk to through Facebook or Instagram, and then when it all comes good, they can, you can get back to normal. But it's really, survive and be positive. On the retail side, the FMCG packaged goods side, I think we've got to be sensitive when we talk about this, because it's actually pretty positive, I think. I mean, it's really Easter and Christmas all rolled into one for probably the next 12 months, right? So staples are going through the roof. There's no, people are talking about food shortages. So with flour, for example, just so everyone knows, wheat is harvested once a year, and then they mill it as they need it. So there's going to be no shortage of food down this part of the world anyway. Yeah. And then, stay positive, keep good relationships with the retailers, ask them how you can help. And the big one is, any investment that you have available for your business, be putting it into price and promotions to get the prices down, to make it more accessible to more people, because people's pockets are going to dry up, and the funky, $4 protein ball are going to be a little bit lower volume than they otherwise might be. So anything that can help in that camp is going to work. And then, smaller pack sizes to get the price down, to get things more accessible in the wellness food and beverage world. So, but I read an article this morning from a European food insights trends provider. It's so gloomy. You might see my comment on LinkedIn there. I see it as package wise pretty positive, and hospitality is dire, but hopefully it's short term. And if you've got the right mindset, I think we can all bounce back. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Just today here in the UK, Carlucci's is bringing in the administrators. They were under CBA anyway. Right. I think what's going to happen on the food service side, I think the independents, we're kind of going backwards. The independent operator is, in very loose terms, is going to win, because they have a much smaller cost base. There's a lot of government support in terms of the furlough scheme for paying the employees their wages. There's also rental waiving going on, and other sort of schemes that are coming in. The larger businesses that have 30, 40, 50 sites, they're the ones who are going to be actually hurting. Even if you take the wage scheme away and the rental away, there's just that cost that they're carrying. So I think when we started, when I started my food service career, when there were a lot of independent players and very few groups, I think we're going to not go back to that, but certainly we're reversing into that arena, and the independent will have a lot more clout and be quite creative and innovative. And if they can just get through this period, I think whether it's the UK and whether it's Australia or Canada or America, I think that's the era of big is going to reduce, I think. And that, honestly, I know that there's jobs involved and everything else, and don't want to sound heartless, but we need a rebalancing, a readdressing of the way things have been, especially in hospitality in this country, at least anyway. And my own experience of the last 18 months, 24 months of losing my business and going through the stress at that level, for me, nothing's changed. I'm still at that stress level. So, sitting at home and experiencing, yes, obviously there's a health issue, but that stress and that pressure is there. So I've got used to it. As opposed to people who are now coming into this and some of them freaking out and they're getting panicky.
I mean, it's an interesting one that lots of people are stressed out. I mean, my personal view is what my mantra on life is just worry about what you can control. And try not to worry about what you can't control. So your own health, your own finances, your own family.
So listen, mate, it's been really insightful. I thank you for your time. Is there anything that you wanna ask, or is there anything that you want to say?
Look, if people out there listening want to have a chat about anything, particularly in the food and beverage world, my djbfoodgroup.com And all my details are on my LinkedIn profile there, David J Burns. And just give us, if you want to have a chat, and, you know, if you can't see the trees from the forest, just give us a buzz, and we'll do a we'll have a
well, I'll share your details on the post anyway. That'll be really good. And you know, listen, I if you're ever down this neck of the woods, please. The concept that I'm trying to do here in terms of this is actually more around. There'll be a lot of this sort of stuff going on in terms of the videoing, when we eventually can come face to face and interact with human beings again, the idea is that I'd like to do a little bit of cook-off and then invite a guest, and we have a natter and we eat and socialize around the food and talk about challenges, and that's the sort of format I want.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, mate, watch out for over the next week. I'm going to start recipes, four ingredients with 4 steps. So
okay.
Keep an eye out.
Okay, good stuff. So I'll be practicing some of your ideas then.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
Anyway, listen, mate. Give my best to the family.
I will.
And look after yourself. And
thanks so much.
No problem. Stay in touch, mate.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.